This is the most ruthless play we've ever seen in the Godfather Trilogy. Beneath the surface, The Godfather 2 was trying to warn you of something that's playing out right now. In Part 2, Michael's operating at a completely new level in the game of power, a level even his father never reached. He went from dealing with mob bosses to even colder, more ruthless adversaries, politicians. More specifically, the sly Senator Geary. What makes this whole storyline hit even harder is how Michael uses the most venomous and controversial law of power. The same law the Mafia used to pull on J. Edgar Hoover's strings for years. The same law that's being used on your president and politicians today. And yeah, I mean that literally. That's right, strap in. We're not holding back on this one. This is the most controversial breakdown we've ever done. But how does Michael actually do it? How is Hyman Roth connected to all this? And how does the powerful senator go from openly and blatantly threatening Michael to becoming yet another puppet on Michael's strings? How does Geary walk in as the hunter and leave on a leash? And yeah, at first glance, none of this is obvious. This meeting is a hinge for the entire trilogy. What's said and what's implied flies over people's heads. Because this is the reason the Godfather Trilogy will live forever. It's why even over 50 years later, the films are more relevant than ever, giving us prophetic insight into how the world really works. This is a Godfather masterclass you need to understand. But I have to warn you, once you see it, you won't watch the film the same way again. And not just the films, this video will change the way you see the world forever. We're gonna connect the dots you didn't know existed. So sit back, light up your cigar, pour yourself a cup of Don Cortado. Hey, and do me a favor, this one's as controversial as it gets and it might get buried. Don't be a stunad. Take out that like and hit the subscribe button and drop Inner Circle in the comments. Let's hit 10,000 likes. Loyalty like that does not go unnoticed. Come on, before I gotta make some phone calls.
That's a Sicilian message.
So it's 1958. Michael's vision, the one he set out with his father, the Don, is in full effect. The Corleone family is no longer just an East Coast crime syndicate. They're transforming into a national empire. Their power now, the Corleones own two of the biggest and most profitable casinos in the city. Their influence stretches beyond the gaming tables, into hotels, unions, and state politics. But for Michael, this was only the beginning. He wasn't content with simply owning casinos. He wanted legitimacy, power that could stand alongside the Rockefellers and the Kennedys. And Las Vegas was the foundation of that ambition. So then came Anthony's communion. The new Godfather, like his predecessor, was still taking care of business even on such an occasion. Outside was all the pomp and festivities, all with that old money and aristocratic charm. But inside, behind closed doors, all kinds of Machiavellian schemes were being played out. From the public's point of view, Senator Geary was simply attending a First Communion in his state, showing support for one of Nevada's most prominent new residents. Michael Corleone had invested heavily in Nevada, created jobs, and made generous donations to local institutions and charities, so it made perfect sense for the senior senator to appear at such an event. To the outside world, Geary's presence looked like a routine gesture of goodwill, a politician honoring a constituent's family occasion, nothing more. But as you and I know, Senator Geary's presence at Anthony's communion wasn't just a polite social call. It was carefully staged as a showcase of legitimacy, a place where politicians, businessmen, and allies could all be seen together under the respectable banner of church and community. Hagen even notes beforehand that Geary expects to be introduced around to influential people, treated like any other guest. And that's the genius of it. In broad daylight, with the cameras flashing and the children playing on the lawn, Michael creates the perfect front for private business. It's the Corleone method: family and religion on the outside, power and leverage behind closed doors. Now, before we get into the real significance behind this meeting, we need to lay out what Michael's vision and goal was. Only then will the pieces fall into place. Michael wanted more than just influence in Nevada. He wanted control. By 1958, the family already owned two of the biggest and most profitable casinos in Las Vegas, but Michael's ambitions stretched further. Michael wanted more than just two casinos, and so looking for the next jewel in his empire, his sights were fixed on the Tropicana, one of the flashiest and most profitable properties on the Strip. This was the hotel that Moe Greene had managed and co-owned by Roth and the Lakeville Road Group, also known as the Forlenza crime family. But after Moe Greene was taken out, Meyer Klingman, who held a piece of the business, was given the task of running the day-to-day operations. If you remember, when Michael met with Greene years earlier, he had offered to buy him out, and he was serious. It wasn't necessarily just an insult or a way to call him out. Michael was interested in purchasing the business and then adding it to the Corleone family empire. So Michael had an interest in this business from quite early on, and is why Michael meets with Johnny Ola to get the all clear that he can move in without any conflict with Roth and his associates. Michael's plan was simple: remove Klingman, secure the license, and bring the Tropicana fully under Corleone control. This wasn't just another business move, it was the next step in his grand design. Owning the Tropicana would tighten the family's grip on Las Vegas, expand their empire into the very heart of Nevada, and cement their reputation as legitimate power players in America's new gambling capital. But to make it happen, Michael needed more than muscle. He needed the blessing of the state, and that meant dealing with Nevada's senior senator, Patrick Geary. What we don't get to see in the film was Michael being briefed by Hagen before taking this meeting. This is important because it explains why Michael gave Hagen that look during the meeting, but instead, he was in for a bit of shock.
This program is brought to you by Don Cortado. Power doesn't shout. It arrives precisely when it means to. Meet Power Brew, a balanced medium roast with rich coffee flavor, elevated by a subtle, earthy finish. Inside, a disciplined trio does its work. Lion's mane to sharpen focus, and chaga, rich in natural antioxidants for quiet resilience, and a smooth, grounded finish. A unique, satisfying cup that supports steady energy and wellness. No jitters, no crash. For the plan, for the pressure, for the long game. Keep your edge. Don Cortado, Power Brew. Make your move. For a limited time, all Culture Mafia members will receive an extra 10% off, as well as free express shipping. But hurry, this is a very limited run. And now let's get back to the film. Ciao.
So, with the scene being set, let's unveil and break down what really happened. The real moves are subtle, not shouted. Blink and you miss them. You might have noticed the way Geary pronounces Michael's surname.
To the university, and it is a magnificent endowment in the name of Anthony Vito Corleone.
Clock that.
And the check is signed by that young man's parents, whom I think we should recognize them. Mike, Pat, Kay, stand up, please. Stand up, let the folks see. Folks, I want you to join with me in giving our...
Corleone on purpose Americanizes it, trims the vowels. It's a subtle dominance cue. Misname a man, place him beneath you. We'll cash that chip later when we talk about disrespect as a strategy.
Of all 4 hotels, Mr. Corleone.
Lot of subtleties, so keep an eye out. Up to this point, he's been performing for the room. Posture, subtle digs, the confidence of a man who believes the system bends for him. This is the pivot from stagecraft to knife work. Watch how his volume drops and his sentences narrow. Geary later on.
The licenses were grandfathered in, so there was no problem with the gaming commission. Now, my sources tell me that you plan to make a move against...
Michael is shocked that Geary came in knowing exactly what Michael wanted. Look at the side-eye he gives Hagen. Hagen knows he messed up.
They tell me that within a week, you're going to move Klingman out. That's quite an expansion. However, it will leave you with one little technical problem.
Oh, Geary decides to drop the facade and get straight into it. He reveals his true identity. The smile drops and the squeeze begins. Threats are delivered privately in carpeted rooms. Geary gradually shifts his tone, starts cordial, slides into contempt. It's a slow boil, not a jump cut.
You're going to have a license. Price is $250,000, plus a monthly payment of 5% of the gross. Of all 4 hotels, Mr. Corleone.
Geary's proud of himself and quite smug at the fact that he knows.
Now, the price for the license is less than $20,000, am I right? That's right. Now, Now, why would I ever consider paying more than that? Because I intend to squeeze you. I don't like your kind of people. I don't like to see you come out to this clean country in your oily hair, dressed up in those silk suits, and try to pass yourselves off as decent Americans.
That look Hagen gives Geary is everything. He now foresees the fate that awaits Geary as the result of his disrespect.
I'll do business with you, but the fact is that I despise your masquerade, the dishonest way you pose yourself and your whole fucking family.
Now Geary has truly gone too far. He crosses from tough talk into blunt insults. Michael is keeping his cool on the outside, but make no mistake, he's fuming on the inside. Volcano under ice, he refuses to give Geary the scene. Michael knows he needs to keep his cool. After all, he is a powerful senator that can turn the law into a weapon. One wrong move, and it's hearings, licenses, and headlines. He's and will now need to take drastic action. He feels responsible for it as well. He's already doing the math on the cleanup. Now, as you can see, there's a lot to unpack here. We've got those key moments highlighted. Now, let's uncover what's really going on. Now, we don't know much about Geary's history or his rise to prominence, but I think we can all imagine what it would have been like. But what I found interesting, and this is just me putting two and two together, is that it seems Geary was in this racket, or whatever you call it, for a while now. You can tell this wasn't the first time he was extorting a ruthless mob boss. He did so with such carelessness, you'd think he was talking to a Fredo. I mean, a regular criminal. Sorry, Fredo. But anyway, there's so much to unpack. Let's unpack the shocking power moves both men were playing. Geary was a simple-minded man. His prejudice, his arrogance, his overall sense of entitlement left him blind to the real game he was playing. And that blindness, that failure to realize who he truly was dealing with, would be his undoing. It seems this wasn't the first time Geary had shaken people down. He had done it before, and so he felt secure in his position, convinced his office gave him untouchable power. But in doing so, he ignored the timeless warnings of strategy. He did not heed Sun Tzu's advice to know both yourself and your enemy, nor did he follow the laws of power. In fact, he broke Law 19, know who you're dealing with. Geary never understood who Michael Corleone truly was, nor the kind of power he commanded, and so he would face the same fate of all those who do not heed these warnings. Now comes the most exciting part of the story, and my personal favorite part. With all the pieces in place, we can finally step back and see the brilliance of Michael's masterstroke, the power move Michael uses that turns Geary's arrogance into his downfall. Let's start with Michael's iconic line. Senator,
you can have my
answer now if you like.
My offer is this.
Nothing.
Not even the fee for
the gaming license, which I would appreciate if you would put up personally. Just brilliant, isn't it? Here, Michael basically strips away the illusion of Geary's power. He doesn't argue, he doesn't raise his voice. He makes it clear that Geary has no leverage over him, that the Corleones won't be extorted by anyone, not even a U.S. senator. The expression on Geary's face here is priceless. It's the look of a man who has just been disrespected in a way he never imagined possible, who's stunned that someone he considers a crook has the audacity to stare him down. Rough up this olive oil guinea to remind Michael who really holds the power. But as we'll see, that's exactly the trap Michael wanted him to walk into. Now, Michael wasn't the type to act out of emotion. He'd tell you to never take things personally. But make no mistake, when Geary showed his hatred, his bigotry, and his open disrespect, Michael made a note of it. Men like him always pay. He would make it a point to humiliate him, but in a way that the senator was still useful to him. The truth is, Geary hit a nerve with Michael. You see, Michael had spent his entire adult life trying to craft the image of a respectable American. That was the whole point of entertaining those snobs outside. The champagne, the donations, the smiling for photographs. Respectability was his armor, the ticket to entering high society. This goes back to before Michael ever joined the family business. It's why he volunteered to fight in World War II, even though his father went to great lengths to keep him from being drafted. Michael wanted to be the clean face of the Corleone name, the son who would stand apart from the shadow of organized crime. He was the decorated war hero, the college man, the respectable outsider. And so even though he didn't need to step in, it would be his life goal to clean up the Corleone name. So for Geary to call him out like that, I can't imagine how Michael wouldn't take it personally. It was a spit in his face, an insult, not just to Michael but his whole family. And with that, he crossed the line, and Michael wasn't about to let that slide. Did Geary really think he was better than Michael, that he somehow was cleaner, both morally, ethically? After all, let's not forget, Michael was no ordinary gangster. He was highly educated as well as a decorated war hero, a man who had proven himself on the battlefield and in the boardroom. What were Geary's achievements? Graduating from an Ivy League school and a Senate seat his family bought him into? A man born into privilege, coasting on connections and bluster, pretending it's all made him superior. And in his eyes, Geary was the pretender. Michael would show him the truth, that the senator, not him, was the filthy one. Michael was now facing a new class of players in the game of power, but he was ready to play their game, and he would prove it by showing Geary for what he really was. So, how does Michael actually play this? Well, Michael goes back to the fundamentals of power, the timeless laws that govern the game, and in this case, Michael unleashes Law 33. So before we reveal Michael's masterful three-step plan, it's essential to understand this venomous law of power. Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Judgment. Everyone has a weakness, a gap in the castle wall. That weakness is usually an insecurity, an uncontrollable emotion or need. It can also be a small secret pleasure. Either way, once found, it's a thumbscrew you can turn to your advantage. We all have something that betrays us, a hidden desire, a private vice, or a wound we work endlessly to cover up. These are the soft spots beneath the armor, the cracks in the facade that even the strongest men carry with them. The key is to know where to look and how to press. Watch what stirs emotion, what provokes anger, jealousy, or defensiveness. Study what people can't resist and what they chase even when it costs them. Once you've identified that weakness, you hold the power to influence, control, or even destroy them at will. And unfortunately for your enemies, the laws of power will help you expose them, pointing out their weaknesses, finding the cracks they try hardest to hide. Let's see how. Pay attention to gestures and unconscious signals. People can lie with words, but their bodies always tell the truth. As Freud said, betrayal oozes out of every pore. Weakness hides the small things, a careless gesture, a nervous tick, a passing word. In conversation, act interested, even share a harmless secret, and watch what comes back. If someone craves love, flatter them. If they soak it up, you've found their soft spot. Study the details, how they tip a waiter, what excites them, what idols they worship. Conscious behavior is a mask. The real truth slips out in the unconscious. Find the helpless child. Most weaknesses are born in childhood. Maybe someone was spoiled, maybe they were neglected. Either way, the need never truly disappears. Touch it, and even grown men will act like children. Watch for signs of immaturity that should have been left behind. If they lacked support, give it to them. If they hint at a hidden indulgence, feed it. When you supply what they secretly crave, they can't resist you. Find the weak link. Sometimes it's not about what the weakness is, but who holds it. Behind every powerful figure, there's usually someone in the shadows, an aide, a spouse, a confidant, who can be swayed. Win them over, and you control the king. Even the tightest circle has a weak link. Michael tried this angle first. He went after Senator Geary's aide, testing if that connection could be the lever, but the aide wasn't strong enough to move the senator. It was a dead end. Michael realized he needed a deeper, more personal weakness, one Geary couldn't hide behind anyone else. And just a quick note, this is the exact stratagem Hyman Roth masterfully used against Michael. I'd love to break it down, but we'll make a separate video to truly understand it. Comment below if you want to see that. But anyway, where were we? Fill the void. The easiest people to control are the ones with a hole inside them. The insecure are starving for validation, and the unhappy can't hide their misery. Feed the emptiness, give them praise, the comfort, the illusion they're missing, and they'll come back for more, again and again. Their weakness becomes your endless source of power. Look for contrasts. What people show you is often a disguise. The loudest braggart is usually the biggest coward. The prude hides desire. The uptight secretly crave chaos. And the shy quietly beg for attention. Weakness often lives in the opposite of what's on display. And this is exactly the lever Michael pulled on Senator Geary. The senator paraded himself as a man of morals, full of pride and principle, but Michael saw through it. Behind the righteous mask was greed, vice, and filth. Geary's true weakness was the very opposite of the image he tried so hard to project. Feed on uncontrollable emotions. Nothing makes a man easier to control than his own emotions. Fear, lust, greed, vanity, hatred. Once they take hold, logic disappears. A man blinded by desire or paranoia can't see the trap you've laid. All you need to do is feed the fire, and while he loses control, you take it. That's exactly what Michael did with Geary. The senator's greed and lust were stronger than his discipline. Michael didn't fight those emotions. He let Geary's own vices spiral out of control until the senator walked straight into Michael's hands. Reversal. Now you need to remember that there's danger in pressing the weakness too far. A timid man pushed into boldness might go further than you ever planned. Feed someone's hunger for recognition and they'll soon demand more than you can give. The childlike needs you exploit can turn wild and unpredictable. The lesson is simple. Know the limits. Don't mistake the thrill of control for power itself. The goal is leverage, not chaos. Power lies in restraint, in pressing just enough to bind, never so much that the weakness breaks free. Michael understood this. Crushing Geary outright would have been reckless. It would have sparked chaos, scandal, and investigations. Instead, Michael applied pressure with precision. Just enough to bind Geary, never enough to break him loose. The senator was kept on a leash, his weakness contained, his dependence secure. Michael didn't chase the thrill of control, he secured the power. Find out each man's thumbscrew. 'Tis the art of setting their wills in action. It needs more skill than resolution. You must know where to get at anyone. Every volition has a special motive, which varies according to taste. All men are idolaters, some of fame, others of self-interest, most of pleasure. Skill consists in knowing these idols in order to bring them into play. Knowing any man's mainspring of motive, you have, as it were, the key to his will. Balthazar Gracian. And so, with some observation and a well-laid trap, Michael found Geary's thumbscrew. All he needed to do was to tighten it, slowly and deliberately. In one stroke, the senator who strutted with arrogance, who tried to humiliate Michael in front of his family, was stripped bare. The mask of power fell away, and what remained was weakness, greed, lust, and fear. From that moment on, Geary wasn't the man pulling the strings. He was the puppet, and Michael Corleone held the strings in his hand. So with a bit of digging, they found his thumbscrew. So once they tightened it a bit, they had all they needed to set the trap. Now, let's be honest, they went a little too far with it. Tom even gives Neri that look, basically telling him that was not necessary. A few photos would have done the job. So how does Michael actually play this? The Corleone power play. How Michael broke Senator Geary. Step 1. Remove the obstacle. Michael's first move was clearing the board. He sent Neri to muscle Meyer Klingman out of the Tropicana, making it clear that Klingman's license and position were nothing but a formality. With Klingman gone, the Corleones could slide into control of the casino. Counter? Klingman is powerless. He folds. Lesson? Clear the board first. Before you can strike at the real enemy, eliminate the distractions and the weak links. Step 2. Discover the thumbscrew. But Michael knew casinos were only half the battle. The real key was politics. That's where he plays Law 33 to perfection. Senator Geary tried to play tough, demanding bribes and insulting Michael to his face. What Geary didn't realize was that he had already revealed his weakness, his arrogance, his vices, and his need to keep his public image spotless. Respectability was his armor, and Michael found the crack. Step 3. Checkmate. Then came the master stroke. Geary's desires lead him directly into a Corleone trap. Expecting pleasure, he instead wakes up in a nightmare. Waiting for him is Tom Hagen, calm and collected, offering help on the family's terms. Now, Michael had Geary's vulnerability in his hand. Counter. Geary has no defense. If the story breaks, his career is finished. His only option is silence and obedience. Lesson? Control is not about violence alone. True power is when a man's own vices, his hidden desires and weaknesses, become the chains that bind him. And from that moment on, the senator who once tried to squeeze Michael became a puppet. Michael not only secured the Tropicana, but he also had a United States senator in his pocket, like so many nickels and dimes, a tool he would use again when the Senate hearings on the Mafia came knocking at his door. Finding Geary's thumbscrew was only the beginning, step one in a much larger play. Exposing a flaw means nothing unless you can make it last. Any man can expose a flaw, but the true master of power ensures that flaw becomes the chain. Michael knew this, and so didn't destroy Geary outright. His destruction would have ended the leverage. Instead, he bound the senator's future, his reputation, and even his survival to the Corleone family. Geary could only breathe so long as Michael allowed it. From that day forward, the senator's career, his reputation, even his freedom, all hung by a single thread, and Michael held it in his hand. Hence, he masterfully combined it with another law of power, law number 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. Judgment. To maintain your independence, you must always be needed and wanted. The more you are relied on, the more freedom you have. Make people depend on you for their happiness and prosperity, and you have nothing to fear. Never teach them enough so that they can do without you. True power isn't in just breaking a man, it's in making sure he can't survive without you. Dependence is the leash. The more they need you, the less they can ever strike back. That's exactly what Michael did to Geary. Once the senator's weakness was exposed, Michael made himself the only shield between Geary and ruin. Geary's future, his name, even his freedom, depended on Michael Corleone. That's the genius of the play. Law 33 identifies the weakness, Law 11 ensures they can never escape it. From that moment on, the proud senator who once tried to humiliate Michael in public was no longer an enemy, no longer even a rival. He was a dependent, and Michael Corleone was his lifeline. He didn't need to threaten to take out Geary. He had something more powerful, something that he wouldn't need to spill a single drop of blood. That is the art of power. Now, I do have a bonus for you today. It's something I found rather interesting. In the original script, things play out a bit differently. There was an alternate way Michael and Hagen chose to deal with Senator Geary. Instead of the setup we see in the final cut, they use Law 33 in a quieter, more subtle fashion, by manufacturing a weakness, a chain they could pull whenever they pleased. In the Senate chamber, Geary is pulled aside during session and handed a note. Moments later, behind closed doors in his office, Tom Hagen arrives. Geary tries to control the meeting, flicking on a tape recorder, setting the tone of authority. But Hagen dismantles that facade instantly. He tells the senator the Corleones have done him a favor. Geary's smugness fades as Hagen slides a stack of markers onto his desk, $30,000 in gambling debts already paid. Geary insists he never owed that much. Hagen brushes it off. It doesn't matter. The family covered it. What matters is that now there's a trail, and only the Corleones can keep it quiet. Geary realizes the trap. His pride in being untouchable has just been shattered. Hagen's message is clear. The senator's survival depends on being friendly, not hostile. Geary despises him, but he has no choice but to accept. What do you think? Which way do you prefer? This version takes us down a different storytelling angle, one that doesn't rely on shock or scandal, but on subtlety. And what makes it so fascinating is how closely it mirrors real life. Power so often isn't about loud threats, it's about quietly creating leverage, manufacturing weakness others can't escape from. And as we'll see, that same tactic is still very much alive today. This isn't just a story from the world of the Corleones, it's a blueprint of power that still plays out today, only now on a scale far more destructive. The cost is greater than ever and the damage cuts deeper.
Introducing Don Cortado's Power Brew, the perfect start to your day.
Since the dawn of civilization, when humans first began to care about their image in the eyes of others, the power of secrets and reputation has shaped history. And from Rome to Renaissance Italy to modern Washington, in every era and every culture, we can find endless examples of powerful men brought down not by open battles, but by their hidden flaws being exposed, the cracks in their armor, the flaws or crimes they tried hardest to conceal. Case study: Cesare Borgia at Senigallia. In the winter of 1502, Cesare Borgia's hold over central Italy was threatened. The Orsini and Vitelli clans, old noble families with strong armies, had betrayed him before, abandoning him in battle. Cesare knew that they would betray him again. To destroy them outright was dangerous. Their fortresses were strong, their allies numerous. So he studied their character. What he found was predictable: vanity, greed, and overconfidence. These men thought themselves indispensable. They couldn't resist the lure of flattery, nor the promise of rewards. Cesare extended a hand of reconciliation. He sent warm invitations, promising forgiveness, peace, and continued influence. He appealed to their pride, assuring them that they were still valued. The Orsini and Vitelli came to the Adriatic town of Senigallia, convinced they had secured both their honor and their power. Cesare rode into town smiling, embracing them like brothers. Niccolo Machiavelli, present as Florence's envoy, marveled at the spectacle. The lords basked in the illusion of safety. But once they were inside, Cesare gave the signal. Soldiers surrounded them. Vitellozzo Vitelli and Paolo Orsini were strangled that very night. The rest were imprisoned or executed. Cesare had eliminated his greatest rivals without risking open war. Machiavelli would later write admiringly, "So well did he know how to disassemble and conceal his intentions that the Orsini were reconciled with him through Signor Paolo, whom he won over with every kind of attention, presenting it with money, apparel, and horses, until their credulity led them into his hands at Senigallia, where they were all taken prisoners." Interpretation: everyone has a thumbscrew, a weakness that cannot be hidden: insecurity, vanity, greed, or reckless indulgence. The Orsini and Vitelli could not bear the thought of being irrelevant. Their craving for recognition and safety blinded them. Cesare exploited this flaw with effortless precision. He didn't attack them at their strongest point, their armies and fortresses. He attacked them where they were weakest, their egos. By feeding their illusions, he guided them into the trap. Once they felt secure, he tightened the noose. Keys to power: everyone has a weakness, a gap in the castle wall. Once found, it's the thumbscrew you can turn to your advantage. Law 33. Cesare showed that power lies not in brute force, but in perception and manipulation. To control men, you must discover what they most crave, what they most fear, what they cannot resist. Flattery, promises, indulgence, these are the bait. Once your enemy accepts them, they are yours to control. Just as Cesare exposed the Orsini's vanity, Michael Corleone exposed Senator Geary's vice and recklessness. In both cases, the proud men who thought they were above corruption became utterly dependent once their weakness was revealed. Case study: J. Edgar Hoover's secret files. From 1924 until his death in 1972, J. Edgar Hoover reigned as director of the FBI, outlasting 8 presidents, countless senators, and dozens of powerful rivals. On paper, Hoover's power came from his position. In reality, it came from something far more dangerous: his secret files. Hoover was a meticulous collector of dirt. He quietly compiled dossiers on politicians, celebrities, businessmen, and even presidents. These files contained everything that could destroy a career: extramarital affairs, gambling debts, ties to organized crime, hidden addictions, whispered scandals. No one was immune. John F. Kennedy's womanizing, Martin Luther King Jr.'s private life, senators' vices, even presidents' indiscretions. Hoover had it all, and everyone knew it. When Robert F. Kennedy became Attorney General, he technically had authority over Hoover. Yet when he tried to rein him in, he found himself paralyzed. The Kennedys knew Hoover had files on them as well. President Lyndon Johnson, who privately despised Hoover, once admitted, quote, "It's better to have him inside the tent pissing out than outside pissing in," end quote. Through fear and secrecy, Hoover made himself untouchable. Presidents came and went, but the director remained. For nearly 50 years, the most powerful men in America were effectively dependent on him for their survival. But Hoover himself was not immune. For decades, he refused to acknowledge the Mafia's existence, a criminal empire operating in plain sight. Yeah, he literally said the Mafia does not exist with a straight face. So yeah, that guy extorting you or that other guy who robbed you were probably fairies or something. But no, in all seriousness, there's a reason why he denied that organized crime was real. Modern historians and journalists have identified a chilling reason behind this denial. The Mafia reportedly held compromising material on Hoover, secrets that in the mid-20th century America could destroy reputations overnight. Mob-connected fixer Roy Cohn, well acquainted with both Hoover and the underworld figures, is believed to have helped the Mafia obtain such evidence. Whether explicit or implied was enough to give Hoover a spine-tingling incentive to look the other way. It wasn't until the Appalachian meeting in November 1957, when New York state troopers intercepted dozens of Mafia bosses gathered in upstate New York, that Hoover could no longer deny the Mafia's existence. The operation exposed a national criminal syndicate that Hoover had long insisted wasn't real. After that public embarrassment, the FBI finally launched Project Top Hoodlum and aggressively pursued organized crime. But the earlier decades of selective blindness were, some argue, secured by fear of exposure. Interpretation. Hoover thought that he had everyone's weakness, but forgot that the rule works both ways. The Mafia had located his vulnerability, and by letting Hoover live under the threat of exposure, they controlled him as much as he controlled others. This is Law 33 in its purest form. Find the weakness, hold the press to the screw, and watch compliance follow. Hoover's selective enforcement wasn't incompetence or ideological bias, it was a compromised choice. He built an empire on secrets, yet one secret was held over him, binding his hands. When the Mafia's grip loosened, after strong federal pressure in the early 1960s, he acted, but only then, and with hesitation, that history attributes to that earlier paralysis. What to learn? The man who traffics in secrets must guard his own most carefully, for the hunter of weaknesses is himself the easiest prey. J. Edgar Hoover ruled Washington by discovering the vices of presidents, senators, and rivals, yet his own vice became the chain around his neck. He denied the Mafia's existence not because they were invisible, but because they wanted to be invisible. Power is never absolute. Every fortress has its crack. The wise strategist doesn't mistake silence for strength, nor secrecy for invulnerability. To find a man's thumbscrew is to hold his destiny in your hands, even if that man is the most feared lawman in America. Case study: modern day. Unfortunately, today is no exception. In fact, we've been watching this game being played out in the most egregious way possible. What makes things so much worse is that the people holding this leverage don't want to use it to get a building permit or something. They're using it to commit some of the worst crimes in human history. It's not about politics, it's about logic. You tell me, all this is taking place right in front of your eyes. There's a difference between having a mutually beneficial deal where both parties win. What's really going on today is blatant extortion. Hell, the cover-up is being broadcast right in front of us. There's that famous quote attributed to Voltaire: "If you want to know who rules over you, look at who you're not allowed to criticize." In ancient Rome, it was Augustus, cloaking power in the robes of the Republic, untouchable to criticism. In the Soviet Union, it was Stalin, a man so feared that even silence could cost your life. North Korea, Kim Jong-un, ruling through fear, their image treated as sacred. In Germany, it was the Mustache Man, where questioning his decisions wasn't just forbidden, it meant isolation, exile, silence, or worse. Now let me ask you this: who is it today? Who is it illegal to criticize? I think you know by now. What makes The Godfather such a timeless film series is the fact that it shows us the world as it truly is. The power games played behind closed doors, the hypocrisy of those who preach virtue while clawing for influence, and the spineless nature of men who care only for themselves. The so-called patriots who sell you and your family just so they don't get exposed. It isn't just a story about gangsters. It's a mirror held up to society, exposing the machinery of power that governs all our lives. Look, I only share this with you because I know how intelligent you are, and that's not me patronizing you. Seriously, the discussions we have in the comments, I've honestly learned so much from them. Some people will hate that called out powerful names. Let them. Doesn't matter where you fall on the political spectrum, because it applies to both sides. Cowardice is not in our DNA, and so in line with our mission, we'll do whatever it takes to get you the truth, no matter where it hides. What's been happening so blatantly in the last few years doesn't sit right with me, so we can't just stay silent. That would break our code of honor. So let's keep our focus on the higher level, the principles, the patterns, the leverage. Names change, the playbook doesn't, so ignore the names. Focus on the game. Drop your take, timestamp it. The inner circle knows the drill. Now, it's not mentioned in the 48 Laws of Power, but I want to share this with those of you who made it this far. It's the only antidote to this venomous law. Look, I wish I could just tell you to have no weaknesses. Now, there are some that you can definitely patch up, but overall, no one is made of marble. While you should always look to address them, the only way to counter this is to be aware of them and live honorably. Here are some practical ways you can do this. Name them. Habits, debts, secrets, dependencies. Call them out before someone else does. Address them. Own the small flaws first so they can't be weaponized. Choose your arena. Don't fight on the ground where your weak spot is the rulebook. Keep your word. A reputation for honor is armor. It short-circuits leverage. Know your seams, fix what you can, and live with such honor that their leverage dies in the light. If you enjoyed this and got something out of it, drop a comment below. Tell me what resonated. If you're ready to take things to the next level to truly take over and transform your life, hit the link in the description. Let's see if you have what it takes. Always a pleasure. Hope this was useful. Once again, my fellow Dons, don't be a Fredo. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to join the Culture Mafia. Now, things are really heating up. Time for the next move. Let's head on to the next one. Watch this video next. Ciao. See you there.